Today, let's break down the backhand serve. Watch as I serve, and try to identify the spin. First one. Second one. Which one was sidespin topspin? The first one was. I intentionally served the second ball a bit higher. Many players mistook it for sidespin topspin, but the first was the topspin serve. This proves that if your serve has deception, your opponent will misread it. Today, we won't focus on long serves, but on short serves. The backhand serve is one of the most effective ways to serve short, aside from the classic heavy backspin versus no spin variation. I will teach the backhand serve in 3 stages today. Stage 1, understand the principles. How to serve sidespin backspin, and how to serve sidespin topspin. Stage 2, we'll cover serve placement, specifically the first bounce, and how to generate maximum spin to improve your serve quality. Stage 3, you'll learn how to make your sidespin topspin and sidespin backspin serves look nearly identical. First, let's start with the foundation, the sidespin backspin serve. Have you ever missed the ball completely when practicing your backhand serve? Let me explain why you're whiffing the ball. Initially, your racket angle is too vertical and angled too far to the side. So when you toss the ball, you fail to make proper contact and it just drops. The contact area on your racket becomes very small. When you try to brush the ball with this angle, you're very likely to miss it. So, the first key point, keep your racket face pointing forward toward the table, not to the side. For the first step, you can start by simply chopping down on the ball. This motion is just like a push. Next, use a push-like racket angle and, after tossing, execute a short push with a compact, sharp motion. Using this method will ensure you make contact every time. Second key point, once you can consistently make contact with that sharp brushing motion, start brushing sideways. At contact, my racket face is angled sideways, and after contact, the tip of my racket points down. So, how do you generate this sideways force? Aim your swing from your backswing position towards the center line of the table. Remember, start your backswing in front of your stomach and direct your force towards the white center line. After making contact, make sure your racket tip accelerates downwards. In the third stage, we increase the difficulty. Start angling your racket face more towards your left side. We started here, now angle it slightly more to the side. Toss and swing sideways, and you'll see the ball curve. Swing sideways, with the racket face angled left, but continue directing your force towards the table's white center line. Fourth stage, now we need to incorporate a proper backswing. In the ready position, your non-playing hand is above your playing hand. As you toss, bring your racket back towards your opposite upper arm. This backswing is crucial for storing power, similar to the wind-up for a hook serve or standard forehand pendulum serve. However, for the first 3 steps, keep the motion in front of your body. Once you've mastered those 3 steps, you can incorporate the full backswing, toss, and brush. That's your sidespin backspin serve. Next, let's learn the sidespin topspin serve. The first step for sidespin topspin is to drop your wrist. This is the same for both shakehand and penhold grips. From there, lift purely upwards. Toss and lift gently upwards. You must practice this step first, or you won't be able to generate topspin on your backhand serve. Don't flick your wrist excessively. Use your forearm to lift upwards. Keep the motion compact. Aim for the ball to bounce twice and go off the table. Penholders, you do the same upward lift. Otherwise, no matter how much you practice, your serve will have weak spin, not enough to make an opponent's flick go off the table. And their push will pop up high. So, you must first master the subtle upward lifting motion. Aim for 2 bounces off the end line to develop a soft touch. Second point, now lift sideways and upwards. Your brushing path should move from your starting point towards the center line in an upward arc. During this, keep your racket face generally pointed towards the front of the table. Otherwise, you'll keep missing the ball and get discouraged. Third point, building on this, just like with the backspin serve, angle your racket face slightly to your left. Now perform the same motion. You'll notice the ball starts to float or drift. Angle your racket to the left, and brush towards the center of the table. Fourth step, now we add the backswing for power. Remember, your sidespin, topspin and backspin serves must use the same racket angle and positioning. The backswing and follow-through must look identical. And that's the sidespin topspin. You must practice step by step. Otherwise, your serve will have ambiguous spin, neither true topspin nor heavy backspin. First, master the feeling of a short serve, because the short backhand serve is extremely effective. A serve that drifts wide to their forehand is very difficult for opponents to handle. Combine that with a fast, long serve to the backhand corner, and you'll create many opportunities. Next, let's discuss how to increase the amount of spin. Let's start with sidespin backspin. To get heavy spin on any serve, you must avoid just wrapping around the side of the ball. For example, on a pendulum serve, if you only contact the side, the spin will be weak. Therefore, your racket angle needs to be relatively open, or more horizontal, to ensure you impart heavy backspin. Now, the issue is that an opponent can see your open racket and read the backspin. But don't worry about that for now. First, focus on maximizing the spin. Many players' backhand serves lack spin because they don't brush the bottom part of the ball enough. Brushing underneath is what creates the spin. If your racket is slightly more vertical, the serve will pop up higher and have much less spin. Second point, you must use explosive, compact force, because the entire backhand serve motion is visible to your opponent. So, when your motion is completely exposed, how do you use that hidden power? Watch closely to see where the hidden acceleration is in my sidespin backspin serve. There's a quick snap. Where did it happen? Look closely at the tip of the racket. It's a small, sharp snap of the racket tip. This is why even my backhand push isn't a simple block. I incorporate a similar racket tip action at the end. So how should you brush the ball? A simple push motion won't generate spin. So when brushing, watch carefully, it's a two-part action. 1, then 2. That's what creates the spin. What I'm actually doing is adding a little extra whip with the racket tip. Penholders do the same. First, cut down at an angle, then add that 1-2 snap with the racket tip, like a fishtail whip. This motion is even more pronounced on my long serves. I never come down at just a single, constant angle. Don't just chop down at one fixed angle. After brushing downwards, the racket tip must have a distinct downward snapping motion. At the point of contact, use your fingers for a second burst of acceleration. In fact, when I teach the push, it's the same principle. I rarely use a single angle, there's always an adjustment at contact. So, the second method for heavy backspin is to incorporate that secondary wrist snap. Third, you must raise your shoulder and elbow. When your shoulder and elbow are raised, it naturally creates space for your racket tip to swing downwards. If you keep your shoulder and elbow low, you're restricted to a single, flat swing path. So, when serving, the shoulder and elbow motion should feel a bit like you're pushing someone away. This will generate a lot of spin. When I generate force, for both topspin and backspin, I always raise my shoulder and elbow. This allows me to accelerate the racket tip at the end of the motion. This covers the sidespin backspin. The sidespin topspin is quite different from the sidespin backspin. First, let's talk about serving good sidespin topspin. Why do many players struggle with it? It's because they are pushing forward through the ball. For sidespin topspin, you must brush the side of the ball to maximize the topspin component. Just as we discussed for backspin, where an open racket face helps brush the bottom for more spin. For topspin, you must contact the side. The more you contact the side, the more topspin you'll generate. Second key point, how do you properly grip or brush the ball to create the sidespin topspin? It's a combination of lifting the wrist and contracting the forearm. Let me serve a sidespin topspin. If you try to loop this ball, it will go off the table. Amateur players already struggle to loop serves with sidespin breaking away from them, they often miss wide. When they loop, the ball tends to go cross-court and miss the table. So, remember, lift with the wrist, and retract the forearm. Do this for a short serve, and the spin will be very strong. You can't keep your forearm extended, that motion generates no spin. You must contract your forearm, bringing it in close to your body. For a long serve, the motion is slightly bigger, for a short serve, it's more compact. This motion is what creates heavy sidespin topspin. Shakehand players should use a grip that favors the backhand, not a neutral grip. You can't perform this serve with a neutral grip because you can't drop your wrist properly. Now that we've covered the mechanics, let's talk about deception. First, I'll serve one. Try to tell me which one is sidespin topspin. First one. Second one. It's actually quite difficult to tell. With a short serve, the second bounce gives you a clue, making it slightly easier to read. A long serve is much harder. Doesn't this serve look like topspin? It feels like the motion is lifting upwards, right? Actually, it's a deceptive motion. Watch closely. If I serve slower, you can see it clearly. It's actually a very heavy sidespin backspin. Let me share a very effective deceptive motion with you. The key is that your follow-through motion must always look like an upward lift. First, for the real sidespin topspin serve, just perform the correct motion naturally. No need to disguise anything. For the sidespin backspin, you make contact using that racket tip snap, and then immediately follow through with an upward lifting motion. Snap the racket tip at contact, then quickly lift upwards. Blend the two motions together smoothly. The ball is already gone from the racket, so the entire follow-through is pure deception. When I use this combination, I will always serve a genuine sidespin topspin first. I serve a real topspin, they pop it up. The second serve uses the identical motion, and they'll push it right into the net. That's usually 2 easy points. You should save this type of deceptive serve for critical points or tight scores. Because the motion is so visible, if your opponent sees it too many times, they'll start to spot the subtle differences. Now, the second type of deception. This is a sidespin backspin serve. So how do you disguise the sidespin topspin? Don't lift upwards as much, and sacrifice a little bit of spin. For the backspin, you brush the ball directly. For the topspin, you brush and then add a deceptive downward follow-through. I'll serve one. Can you tell if it's topspin or backspin? The serve I just did was sidespin topspin. Often, your serve isn't effective not just because of a lack of spin, but also a lack of placement, variation, and deception. The most fundamental form of deception is making your backswing and follow-through identical for different serves. For example, your sidespin topspin and backspin serves must end with the exact same follow-through. This is a basic requirement. When practicing, we separate the serves, open racket for backspin, vertical for topspin. But to be deceptive, you must sacrifice some spin to make the motions look the same. You can't use a completely open racket face and then lift up, everyone will see that it's a fake motion. You need to find a compromise between the open and vertical racket angles. As long as you can control the direction of force, it will be effective. Your topspin serve can't be too vertical, so you have to find that middle ground between the open and closed angles. The backspin might be slightly more open, and the topspin slightly more closed. Also, keep the contact time brief. If your entire swing is the real emotion, it's easier for them to read. You must compromise on spin and technique, rather than having two serves with completely different motions and racket angles like you did when you first started practicing. Otherwise, anyone can read it. What is an obvious serve? It's when I tell you it's topspin, but it's so heavy you still can't return it. What is deception? It's mixing real and fake, making the opponent fail by misjudging the spin. Wanting to have both maximum spin and maximum deception at the same time requires a very high level of skill. You have to choose one to focus on. Don't get stuck in the middle, where your serves are neither deceptive nor spinny. You can choose to make your backspin serve extremely spinny, so that even if they know what it is, they miss due to the heavy spin. The second strategy is to brush the ball and then quickly add a deceptive follow-through, making them misjudge it as topspin so they miss. Your mindset should be one of these two strategies. Trying to do both at once is too difficult and will be easy for your opponent to read. Let me give you some good advice, whether you're better with pendulum or reverse pendulum serves. For those good with pendulum serves, I have two suggestions. Master these three placements. First, the short serve to the backhand corner. This placement is key for your serve and attack game. Second, instead of a long serve down the middle of the backhand, practice a fast serve right down the sideline that jams the opponent. A long serve to the backhand might seem effective now, but against higher-level players, it becomes useless. Simply changing the placement can double the effectiveness of your serve. Third, for all pendulum serves, you must learn to serve short to the middle of the table. If you watch pro matches, you'll see they often target this short, slightly forehand side area. This placement is awkward for both their forehand and backhand receive, especially with a mix of topspin and backspin. Mastering these three placements will definitely help your game. Now for right sidespin serves, which includes hook serves, reverse pendulum, and backhand serves. My first suggestion for amateur players wanting a surprise factor: don't serve from the backhand corner. Serve from the middle of the table. Because a right sidespin serve naturally comes back to your forehand, if you stand still, a skilled opponent will just return it there. That's why for a hook serve, I stand inside the center line. For a backhand serve, I might stand around the center line. So when I practice this serve, I stand here. Serving from the center gives you better control for short serves and a shorter, faster path for long serves, leading to higher quality. It also makes your follow-up shot easier. The reaction time you give your opponent serving from the center is much less than when you serve from the backhand corner. Second point, you must use classic, effective placements. Since you're using right side spin, your short serve to the forehand will drift wide. So, work hard on your short forehand placement and your long backhand placement. If you can execute these two placements well, it will be enough for most matches. However, you still need a go-to serve for critical moments. I don't recommend serving short to the forehand from the backhand corner. Often, amateurs serve and get caught off guard by a wide-angle return they can't reach. This just exposes weaknesses in your footwork and anticipation. One more point, with your right sidespin serve, be bold and attack your opponent's forehand corner. Regardless of where you stand, if you use a hook serve to go down the line to their forehand, the opponent can only identify its direction at the very last moment. So when you execute this fast, long serve, do it decisively and without hesitation. If you watch closely, the initial motion looks like you're serving cross-court. Only at the last instant of contact can they tell it's going down the line to the forehand. This creates significant deception for your opponent. If you practice using these placements I've mentioned, your serve will improve a great deal.